Hello.
So,
Okay. Trying to remember, I think, didn't Brad Becker say he was unavailable for this meeting? I think he was in Florida or somewhere that we all wanted to go with him. Okay, and looks like we're good then. I think the purpose of today's meeting was to go through the report that was prepared by Larry and Gallagher regarding our request on the IPERS and Des Moines teachers. I'm going to have Larry just walk through the report and then at the end take questions, just so we can make sure that we get through the whole report. All right, and with that, Larry, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. I am going to go ahead and share my screen here so everybody is on the same page. Here's my presentation. Okay, I'm assuming everybody can see my screen at this point. So we were asked by Des Moines to look at their pension plan and see if transferring a group of people to the IPERS pension plan without service credit would cause anybody harm by doing this, to try to pick a group that it would not cause harm to. And as we go through this presentation, we'll see it. The word harm is kind of, it's hard to define in this situation because of when certain people will want to retire. People that may want to stay in the IPERS plan a little bit longer may be able to see a benefit, where if somebody is planning on retiring at 55, you're probably not going to see a benefit from moving over to the IPERS plan. So we'll kind of get into some graphs and charts on that as we move through the presentation. So that was the main premise of getting us involved. So we did some basic plan provisions and some basic assumptions for this, and so I'm going to kind of go over this. Most of this, I think most of you have been on this committee for a while and probably already know a lot of this, but you know, the normal retirement age in the Des Moines teachers plan is age 55. When you get to an age that you decide to retire, which would be after age 55 or after, we are required by the plan document to use certain factors to convert that benefit into an annuity. And the factors that we use are 4.5% interest and the 1994 unisex group annuity mortality. The member contributions, there's really, and I'm sure y'all all know about that, the contributions are really arranged depending on what year you start with the system, and it also for employer and member contribution. So we could kind of just took an average of what we were seeing, and we got around 6.5% and 8.1%. The vesting service in this plan is 4 years. And we used a 3% salary scale. And we used that for all projections, so it was kind of even. When we went to the IPERS plan, we used the same 3%. So we were comparing apples and apples. You know, your salary under one's going to be your salary under the other. So, you know, we basically just used the 3% for both plans to compare apples to apples in that situation. The contribution interest rate, we used 5.78, and that was given to us as the 5-year average of the contract. That should be, well, that's basically, I should say, really just interest rate. I think contribution interest rate. It's just the interest rate on your account. The other thing we were given was the excess earnings. That is done internally at Des Moines. And they've come up with 12.2% as a 5-year average. So, you know, that's a nice benefit, and that has a fairly nice impact on the results as we look at that and on retirement benefits for people that are in the Des Moines. It looks like this got covered up, but that was said, that's just referring to this table here. And these are the employer plus the employee contributions. So, oops. One slipped on that. Okay, so let me go one. Okay, so what we're comparing it to. Now, again, going into the IPERS plan, we have we're assuming no service for any purposes. So when we have a normal retirement benefit of age 65 or age 62 with 20 years of service or rule of 88, the 62 with 20 years, the 20 years would be as if you were starting brand new in the IPERS system. So really the 20 years, unless you're, you know, 42 when the switch would take place, you know, I mean, it could be 43, you could hit it at 63 or 64 too. But to actually hit it at 62, you would have to be 42 or younger at the time of the switch. And again, the service rule of 88, the rule of 88 means your age plus your years of service. And again, there's very few people that are gonna hit that. I'm not sure if anybody did, to be honest with you. We did check for it. I think maybe 1 or 2 people that are younger, but for the most part, that's non-existent to most participants that would be moved over to the IPERS plan. The IPERS benefit is a little different. Y'all kind of have a cash balance and then convert it to an annuity. Their benefit formula just is an annuity formula. And it gives you 2% of your average salary for each year of service up to 30 years. So if you retired at 30 years of service, you would get 60% of your average salary. And I believe the average salary, do we have that average? Oh yeah, is a 5-year average. So when calculating your benefit, generally that's probably going to be your last 5 years of employment. There may be other circumstances that it wouldn't be, but for the most part, that's generally what we see. They have an early retirement benefit at age 55, but they do have a fairly healthy reduction in that benefit. So at age, you start reducing at age 65, and you do it by 0.5% for each month. So at age 55, so it's really 6% a year. So if you did that for 10 years, you've got a 60% reduction, or your benefit's only 40% of your total accrued benefit. So as you can imagine, that really eats into what your accrued benefit, and we have taken those reduction factors into consideration in our calculations. We've also taken into consideration the age 62 and 20 years of service in our calculation. to that. And also, and again, you'd be starting out with 0 years of service, but you'd have to have 7 years of vesting service. So to really be eligible for their age 55 benefit, you would have to be 48 or younger at the time of the switch over to IPERS. 48 would give you 7 years at age 55, and then you could retire early under their plan, which under your plan, you can retire at 55. So anybody could retire at 55, that's in the currently in the plan. Okay. Okay, so these are the member contributions, and I did not check today or yesterday. I'm not sure if I did or not, but the last report that I could find out on the internet for the IPERS plan was the 2021 report, and the member contributions there were 6.29%, and the employer contribution was 9.44. This did not depend on your age or service. It was just a flat percentage for every member in the plan. And again, the salary scale I used was 3%. There is no cost of living benefit in the IPERS plan, which again makes more beneficial the Des Moines teachers plan, because there is the excess earnings piece that comes into play every year. Well, maybe not every year, but it would come into play in most years, assuming there are excess earnings to be distributed. Okay, so what we've done here is look at everybody. I'm going to kind of explain the calculations here in just 1 second. So this is saying the people that could retire at age 55. So we're assuming that the plan would go out at, with the switch would be at 7/1/2023. We just used that year. That's not anything Des Moines gave us. We used that year just because it's the end of a plan year and it was cleaner. So don't take anything by that date. That was just something we used for calculation purposes. So if you're 47 right now, you'd be 48 at 7/1/2023, and then you would be able to retire at age 55. Otherwise, if you're over that right now, over age 47 right now, you would be over age 48 at the time you switch. So retiring at age 55 would not be an option for you. So I kind of want to get into, and I already had some questions on the methodology we use. So I created a spreadsheet, and this is not in the material, but I kind of did this later in the day today, and it can be provided to anybody that would like it, but I just wanted to kind of show the methodology that we're using. So there it is. Okay. So I took somebody that's around the average age, which is 44. This should be 225. This shouldn't match. Okay, so that should match here. That should go there. Okay. Okay. So we're going to say that the average person's around 44, or the person I'm using for this calculation. They have an account balance of 225,000. We're using an investment return of 5.78. As I mentioned earlier, that's the 5-year average. And we're using excess earnings of 12.2%. We're using a salary scale of 3%. And for this example, we're using a higher age of 25, which would make the employee and employer contribution 14.39% of pay. This assumption I didn't put up there, I guess I forgot to do that, but we're assuming a salary at the current age of $75,000. So if you bring the salary forward with 1.3% interest for the entire period, you'd see that this person, if they waited all the way till they were 65, their ending salary would be around 140,000. If they retired as early as 55, that's still 11 years within the salary scale, and you'd have a salary of around 104,000. So, the salary scale does come into play there. So some of the numbers may look larger on those slides that I have. So I want you to take into consideration, we're not really talking in today's dollars. We're talking as when the person would retire. So anyway, this is just a simple calculation here. We're just taking the 14.39% each year of the salary. We're giving interest to the prior year's balance. So this would be the starting balance. This would be the starting balance. And then we're going to give that interest, and we're going to add the contribution to it. So it's this cell here is the 225 times 1.0 times the 5.78% plus the contribution of 11,116. And we just add that up all the way down. And we, at age 55, we get a balance of, again, we're starting out with a 225 at age 44. So we're assuming from 25 to 44, we got 225,000. And now we're assuming by the time we hit 55, we'll get 605,000. A lot of that is accumulating on the balance that's already there, and of course, accumulating on contributions. So if I go down here, we have the annuity factors, and there's nothing special about these. These are just these are the 4.5%, and they're using the mortality table we're required to use. So this is saying, if I took this $605,873 and I wanted to see what that would be as an annuity using the assumptions in the plan, I would get I would get the 39,409, which is the 605 divided by the 15. So that's saying if all those assumptions worked out, you should get 39,409 as an annual payment if you had that amount in there. The excess earnings are basically just 12.2% bigger. And so these may look like big numbers, but then you say as a percentage of salary, they're still fairly decent numbers, especially if you stay all the way to age 65. But, if you go out at 55, they're 43, and you can get up to 60% at age 60. So, and this right here considers nothing but the Des Moines plan. So this is as if nothing changed right here. So that's our assumption here. We're using from here to this side, and we're just using these sections here. And this is as if nothing changed in the plan for this, sample person. Okay, so the next set of numbers down here is going to get into the IPERS plan. So, at the end of at age 45, you would have your first year. You'd come in at 44, you'd have your first year of service at age 45. And so these years of service go all the way down. We don't go past 30, so we don't have to worry about that second provision where you go down to 1%. So it is a flat 2% of the average. So now we're taking an average. So that's what you're seeing here. You're not seeing the actual salary, you're seeing the average of that salary. So whereas if you had $139,000, $140,000 at age 65, again, that would be in dollars, whenever that year would be 21 years from now, you would have an average of 131,000. So the benefit is simply 2% times the 11 times the average. And that gives you 21,548. And then if you multiply that by, that's the wrong factor for that one. No, 8. I did this right. That should be 0.4, I believe. Because it's 0.6, and then this should be so 8. So this should be 0.5. Okay, so I did this right. Okay, so this is 0.52. This is 0.4. Got it. Okay, so I think I got it after that. I can check my math. It's just going down 6% a year since 65. So I think this should be 0.4. So the early retirement benefit is basically just multiplying the early retirement factor times the times the accrued benefit. So what this is saying, if you terminated service at age 55 in the IPERS plan, but did not take your benefit till age 65, you would get the full 21,548. But if you terminate and receive your benefit immediately, you get 8,619. And the reason obviously for that is you'd be receiving 10 more years of payments. And so the way they're adjusting for that is this early retirement factor. So this benefit here is basically if you wait to 65 to take it. Doesn't mean you work till 65. This could mean you work till 55. You quit and you come back 10 years later and you tell IPERS, I want to take my benefit, then you would get the 21,548. But if you quit, and what we're assuming in our projections that you'll see on the slides is that when a person quits, they start taking their retirement. That may not be the case for everybody, but that is, we have to make some assumptions about what's going on with that. So the second part of this would be there's this frozen benefit. I would say there's this account balance, I guess, still at Des Moines. So this account balance is the 225. Well, instead of going up with contributions and interest, this is just going up with the 5.78% interest. So this is just the balance with interest because you would still continue to receive the interest on your payment. So this is saying if you just got interest from the payment rather than got interest, so this is interest and contributions, this is just interest, you would have $417,500 approximately. And then this is without earnings. Again, we're taking that balance and we're dividing by these factors down here, which are the annuity factors that come into play. And you get the 27,154. And then if you put in what the 12.2% is, and I realize the 12.2% is an annual basis. It's not like a cost of living adjustment. But since we're assuming the exact same thing for every year going into the future, we are assuming that it just stays the same, So your benefit would always be 27,154, and then with your excess earnings each year would be 34,670. The next year benefit would still be 27,154, but the excess earnings again would be 12.2%. Again, that is an assumption, but we also did it with zero earnings, and I can show you that if you've never got an excess earnings, just say excess earnings never was given again, what would it come up to be? Just so you could compare the two at that point. So anyway, when we come down here, you'll see we're just adding up the benefits here. So it's the early, again, we're assuming you're taking it immediately. So we're taking that benefit plus the annuity with excess earnings. And then here you can kind of see the difference. It's, if you never got excess earnings, you'd be getting, just the straight 35 thousand. And so that is how we did the calculations. I know that may have gotten a little too much in the weeds, but I did have a question about how we did that. And I kind of wanted to show, I kind of also wanted to talk about how we're really looking at not today's dollars. If you're 44 years old and you're going out at 55, we're looking at, 11 years from now. We're looking at, 2000. Well, we're saying we started at 7/1/23, so 11 years from there would be 7/1/34. So obviously the dollars are a little bit different, but I think the ranges and the comparisons are in line. Okay, so what we found out in the calculations is, somebody at 35, the age 55 benefit doesn't do them very much good. This here is the line that is just to stay in Des Moines, like nothing changed. So all of the light blue lines are nothing changed. You stayed in Des Moines. The dark blue lines are if you if you went to IPERS. And so really retiring at age 55 is not beneficial under any circumstances. You can see the percentages here. So you get like a negative 10% benefit here. And this is, I guess, negative 26 is what we're saying there. So early retirement is reached by 60%, as we discussed. So that's really the driving force, is the 60% early retirement reduction factor. So the way we looked at this, and we looked at it in bands, we didn't look at it, well, we did look at it individually, but we put this in bands. And, we came out with really nobody benefits under that scenario. So if somebody was thinking of retiring at 55, it's probably not best, assuming all assumptions are met. And even it seems like it would take a lot for the assumptions to be off, that far. It seems that it's probably not a great idea to go to IPERS. So then we looked at age 57. We kind of did 57 because, the cutoff would be kind of age 50 at the time the plan goes, the people would be switched. And we thought there was a good cutoff period. Again, we see that we're not getting much bang for our buck here. We've got, we're still at like minus 20% to around minus 5%. So again, the accumulation and the factor, you're only getting 52% of your benefit here. The early retirement reduction factor is 48%, which means you would get 52% of your benefit. So that is, you can kind of see you're not getting much of the benefit there. So the next, okay, wait, that's still 57. So 60, we get into, it's getting closer on these ends. And these are the things, where the assumptions go. And, if you say to exactly age 60, or if you go to 61 or, so, and again, we're using we're averaging the bands in here between these ages, 44 to 40, 40 to 44, 45 to 49. So as a group, this is a little bit less. There could be some people in there that would actually benefit, because this is pretty close. So this is pretty close. So you may have some people in that band that benefit. You may have some people in that band that don't. But as you get further out, it's obvious, that for the 35-year-old, it's the 35 or the 35 to 39-year-old that there probably aren't anybody in those bands that are benefiting. Here, maybe you have somebody, probably not, but in these, and then definitely here, you see that you are finally breaking out. But again, this is somebody working until age 60. So if they wanted to retire early, as I showed, you would earlier, you wouldn't necessarily have that benefit. And there's not an extreme benefit here. So if I may want to retire between 55 and or 57 and 60, you may just say, you know what, it's not beneficial to me to go to IPERS. So and again, we're still looking at a reduction factor of 30%, so you get 70% of your benefit. So again, there's a big reduction there, still even at age 60. So now we get to age 62. And this is when it becomes more beneficial, especially for people at this end. And the reason that is they've hit that 20-year mark. Remember, you could have an unreduced benefit, or would be your normal retirement benefit ultimately at age 62. So there's no reduction there. So all of these people have hit age 62. Once they hit age 62, they have 20 years of service. So it's very beneficial to them. This range right here, we would have some people that have hit the 20 years and some people that haven't hit the 20 years. So if would be at the date of switch, 42 or under, then 62 would probably be the way that would be better for you. But if you were 43, you'd have to wait till age 63 to get the 20 years. And then the benefit would be more beneficial at 63, but you get the picture. To get it at 62, you'd have to be 42 or younger at the date of the transition. And so then 45 to 49, we're really not getting anybody that's hitting. Nobody in there would get to 20 years, so they'd still get the reduction factor here, which is 6% times 3 years, which is 18%, or 82% of their benefit. They would get 82% of benefit. But still, at the end of the day, even getting 82% of their benefit, they're benefiting. They're benefiting by switching to IPERS. And finally, this is just another group, again, kind of the same thing as this group, really mirrors the same thing. Okay, so this is age 65, and so there are no early retirement factors. If we consider to assume the 5.78, then this person, these groups over here would still benefit more, but it's fairly close. If we didn't get if the average over their career was not 5.78, was 5, then we'd be looking at IPERS doing better. So again, that's done on how the fund does. So if you think the fund is going to be able to, the last 5 years, it's been able to do 5.78%. Will it be able to do that in the future? Again, I can't answer that question, but if it does less than a 5.78, you're better off going to IPERS, probably, depending on how far under 5.7. But if it does better, if it does 6 or 6.5, you're far better off with the accumulation factor of the 6% in the Des Moines plan. So, there's still there's some unknowns there as far as the what are we really going to get as the trust, and that makes it a little bit harder. But as you get further out, you see the IPERS plan is winning. And again, if we got, say, 7%, maybe these people would, or 6.5% or 6%. 6% would probably make it closer, probably still be winning on the IPERS side. But because you're still getting the 6% on the balance that you had already accumulated. So it's not, if we bump this up to say 6%, this would go up more, but this would also go up because it's still having that effect on the current balance that the person would have at the time of transfer. And then we kind of did it, we did it in the age groups, saying, okay, if you're less than 40 now, how does this look? And, you know, again, same scenario. We're not really getting anywhere. Once you hit the 62, these people, since they're under 40, would all have would have an unreduced benefit or would be at their basically normal retirement benefit. And then it kind of comes down a little bit when you get to the end, because this is still accumulating. This is already taken into consideration. The you know, this is really the normal retirement benefit for it, and this is still kind of catching up. Here we've got, this is 40 to 44. You don't see it as pronounced because, again, not everybody is gonna hit that. You know, the people that are under 42 will hit it in this group, but the people above 42 won't. So you see that, you know, you're basically better off again here. And then at 62, you start seeing it go the other way. So again, not really much impact until age 62. 45 to 49-year-olds, none of them are going to get to 20 years. So you see almost a straight line of, you know, how they increase. And so you go from, you know, at the low end, if you went out at 55, you'd only be getting something like negative 10% of the benefit here. And if you, you know, went out at 65, you'd be doing the best at 6%, because, you know, this is the rate of change there. 50 to 54, same scenario really, that we just saw. And so one of the things, and I'm not going to go through all of these, I'll come back to this because, but we've got these graphs in the back in the appendix that have without excess earnings. So we did 12% excess earnings in the previous slides. These are the exact same slides, and you see you'll get a little bit different answers, but you're still not getting anybody that's benefiting at 55. Here you at 57, still nobody benefits from really going over. Again, we've got assumptions in there such as the amount of earnings that will get done. And then here we start seeing, you know, at age 60, we start seeing positive, you know, in this 40 to 44 group, which was not positive in the other group. And so you can kind of compare these. Again, these are the exact same graphs as the other graph. Here's the age 62. Obviously, these are doing better. And, you know, it's better across the board here if no excess earnings. So you can kind of compare these two and, you know, think about it. Well, what if it was in the middle? You can kind of maybe look at these graphs and kind of get an idea of where you think it would be if it was in the middle. So that's kind of those graphs. I'm not going to go through each one. They kind of tell the same story, but it you know, it benefits people a little earlier. Some people at 60. You know, rather than 62 for some of the others. And this, I think we're kind of missing some verbiage here. They will not have a positive impact on participants' benefits unless they stay in the plan and accrue a benefit until age 60. This is really talking about the graphs at the bottom, which are the without excess earnings, because really with excess earnings, this is a 62, which I think this is talking about be able to receive an unreduced benefit. So, so this number is depending on if you're looking on the with or without. If it's with, it's 60. If it's without, it's 62. So that is the point of this. And so the average cost, again, we showed this in the beginning. The IPERS plan is 9.44% of pay. The average, obviously, different people are getting different things, is 8.1% of pay. And that there's a difference there of 1.34% of payroll. So that was, could be a consideration as well. I think that's mostly it. I wanted to leave some time. I hope I didn't go through that too quickly, but I knew there would be questions, so I wanted to kind of leave some time here at the end so we could go over any questions. I'll do my best to answer them, and if I can't answer them on the spot, I will definitely get back to you and let you know the answer at a later time. Okay.
Thanks, Larry. That was really helpful. Let me just sum up some of the notes that I took just to make sure that I have my head around this correctly.
Okay.
At first, this report seems counterintuitive because we are always thinking about comparing DMTRS to people who've been in IPERS the whole time. But this is different because we're comparing a person's situation if there's no change. We're only looking at DMTRS people, and we're comparing their situation if they stay in DMTRS and if they were to switch to IPERS. So that's why it may be counterintuitive for people. The benefit to switch to IPERS is only good if you intend to retire later. So if anybody is looking for that 55 benefit, it really is only effective, the switch, if you intend to retire at 62 or older. So we have to kind of ask ourselves, how much is the early retirement option worth to people in that regard? And did I hear you say, Larry, that the annuity for switching to IPERS does also include the account distribution from the DMTRS account that was in stasis if we switched? Is that right?
Yeah. What it would do is it would just continue to accumulate interest. It would not obviously get any more contributions, but at the end of it, we've added the two together, the contribution with interest and the IPERS benefit, to come up with a total benefit in our calculation. And I would agree. And I would agree with you. If we were talking about somebody that started like right out of college and went straight to IPERS, they would get this rule of 88 and they would have the 62 and 20. That would look at a different story. We're talking about most people, or at least in their 40s, that we're talking about would be switching, and so that has a big difference.
Okay, and then the last point that you made was that there is a benefit to switch to IPERS in that you have an increased contribution rate from the employer of a 1.34%, which over a 10-year period, like wait from 55 to 65, could make a big difference, or from 44 to 65, that's a 19-year difference. So
but that really, theirs is a different type of plan. You don't really have an account balance over there. So that just goes into the trust. You're not really getting, that goes into the trust as an overall, whereas here in Des Moines, you're kind of split out individually. So even though they're putting 9.44, you're not really seeing anything different than just what the 2% of pay benefit would be with the early retirement factors.
Okay, so that 1.34% is not actually having an impact on the annuity. It really is just an extra paying into the pot because of the difference in the models.
Yeah, it's not benefiting necessarily. It's not benefiting the employee anymore because of the way their formula is done. You don't have a specific account balance assigned to you. You just get 2% of your pay of your average pay per year of service you're there. Of course, there's something in excess of 30, but nobody gets there because of the scenarios we're looking at with these people, with everybody that would go over. So yeah, it's not an individual benefit.
Larry, I want to ask a couple of mechanical questions. Can you tell me what was the starting salary used for the under 35 employee group and the 35 to 39 group?
Yeah, let me try. I don't want to, let me stop sharing my screen because I'm going to go into something that's got individuals' names and I don't want to obviously pull that up. I can give you that answer though. Take a second. I don't have that spreadsheet open, but give me 1 second.
I'll ask this question because I think it's probably a Kathy question. Kathy, is the 12.2% excess earnings average, is that a 5-year average for the 4.5% group, or is that the average for all groups?
It's the average for the 4.5 group because that's where this, if you retired today, that's the group you would fall into.
I'm trying to get to your answer here. So okay, so the under 35 group, we had a 2020. So I started with the salaries we were given as of 7/1/22. So it had been, and then we put the salary scale up at that. The salary we had for that group was
That only had
around,
one person in it, Larry, so you might not want to give that
oh,
one.
yeah, you're right. It did. You're correct. So let me, the 35 to 39, we had some people in, and 35. All right. Yeah. So we had a few people in there. We had an average of around 68,000, little north of 68,000.
So is it fair for me to say that the 35 group, the 35 and 39 group, were actually using their current starting salary? Actually, we did that across all of those groups. And then a 3% was applied for all of them, even if we had someone that we would actually know because of our salary schedule where they more likely would go.
Yeah.
So did you basically take today's number and then just put 3% kind of regardless of what any other? And then can I ask, and I don't know who can answer this, why are we using a 3% salary assumption when, I don't want to say a percentage, but it's a super majority of the plan members will not receive a 3% salary increase going forward? I mean, we would have a hard time showing a 3% salary increase over a 3-year window for a large majority of the employees that are in DMTRS.
Blake, I think I can answer some of that. I think we provided Larry with what the percentage change was last year, which was the package was a 3%. I understand what you're saying, that not everybody got 3%, but if we did 3% for both IPERS and DMTRS, it provides the same comparison. We could do 0, run it with 0 for both groups. But I think,
and I think my ask is whether we have the ability, whether Larry, those Excel spreadsheets can be used, because I have a problem, because I don't agree with you as someone who's done some of the math on the side. It's not the same to apply a 3% increase and then translate it into an IPERS payout as it is to put 3% on salary and then compound interest on it over 10, 12, 15 years. I'm not saying it's not similar, but it's not the same mathematics. And I'm struggling because I want to be able to explain to plan members in a more clear way exactly where we are. And this report is inflating salary in a rate that I will dream will happen, but it won't. I mean, I can put millions of dollars on the line there. It's just not going to happen. We don't see the economies from the state or our district. We're not going to have teachers making $120,000 10 or 15 years from now, except in my dream. And so I wonder, because I appreciate, Larry, when I looked at your spreadsheets, that all made total sense to me. I wonder if there is the ability to simply change to what may be a more easily agreed upon salary increase to look at and see, does it change these graphs? Or do we look at the graphs and go, you know what, it actually didn't make any difference whatsoever?
Yeah, I mean, let me just try something real quick. But this, I would not think it's gonna make, I'm trying to think through the math in my head, but I would not think it would, but, I've got we could just take a quick look here. So I'm doing the 3%. I think this is just, hopefully, I just did that down there. But I can do that quickly. So like, what do you do, 2%? And just have 2% go out. And okay, that changes it. You know, I don't know what we were before. Let's see, so we were, I'll just take the percentages of salary and do copy. Paste value.
I just wonder if, Kathy, if we can't get to Larry a 5-year average of salary increase, just as we've kind of used on all the other pieces here, I feel comfortable with saying, hey, let's look at where salary's gone in 5 years, knowing that, and this is not 100%, but for the most part, okay, the 35 group, the 35 to 39 group, they're still going to be on steps for a little bit so we can apply fairly. But virtually everybody else in all those other groups, they are in an off-step situation where we just kind of know that they're not going to see a 3% salary increase. And maybe we take a 5-year average, put that number in there. So then we're at least painting a more accurate picture. Because when I look at this, it creates for me a skeptical mind because I don't know. I stop and I go, I know that my salaries are not going to go down that line. And so I want to see in a more realistic way what Larry's looking at it doing, but also to see that it reflects when I email to you, Kathy, or to Sherry and say, hey, run me a projection. I don't want to look on this grid from Larry and be like, you know what, maybe I want Larry taking over the finances of DMTRS because he's showing that I'm going to be actually seeing a better return when I retire than might actually be true to form, given that a 3% salary increase I don't think is reasonable.
Right. I completely hear and understand what you're saying. I'm hesitant to do a 5-year average just for the mere fact that you stated of if you're not on step, you're not going to see even what the average was. So if, the total package salary percent was 2%, not everybody in the teacher salary schedule saw 2%. So would you be more comfortable with just doing a straight
Well, I mean,
percentage?
Kathy, another way we could apply it is we could take, and this is a little more complicated, but we know basically anyone who is at 14 years of service or greater is going to be at a smaller, barely 1% salary increase going across the board. That gets to be a little trickier because then you've got to actually go in and find each person to see have they basically received their longevity, and therefore we have a much more predictable and more historical understanding of where their salary is going to go.
Yeah, I was just trying to simplify and even use like a 1% as a more realistic expectation.
Or run it at 1, 2, and 3, so that way we can see 1, 2, 3. I think I want to keep it simple, but I also want to. I'm going to be honest, I would not want this report, the way this is displayed, going out to members because to me, it creates an unrealistic outcome that they may look at and say, oh my gosh, look at where my finances actually are going to be. It's not true. They're not going to be at the numbers that we're seeing on here unless if we get 3% salary increases, which is not realistic.
Okay. Larry, would you be comfortable running at 1, 2, and 3%? You've already got 3.
I guess I'm just trying to see what we. Yeah,
and that wouldn't be something you'd have to do today. I mean, if you could run it.
I guess my question is, how are we going to show that? I don't mind running all of those. That's not a problem. Are we going to put all of the graphs in there, or what do we want to take a look at the graphs once we've got them and see? I mean, I don't know which real. Obviously, I don't work with teachers. So I'm not sure which are reasonable.
My question for Kathy would be, what's the average retirement age? Because why are we running graphs for 55 if there aren't any DMTRS members retiring at 55? Do we know, Kathy, how many
kind of retired at the board?
Have we had people retire at 55 in the last couple of years?
Have.
And I think I'll chime in. I think we want that number because one of what I would call the few still standing benefits of DMTRS is that you can retire at 55 and that you know that you're not subject to that reduction that we talked about with IPERS. So I do think that it may not be that most people look at financially that 55 makes sense, but at least they know that it's there and that there's not a reduction. And so I actually liked, being able to see the 55, 57, 60, 62, and 65 numbers.
Okay, makes sense. I was just trying to make Larry's job easier if there wasn't anybody that in the past 5 years that retired that early. But since there are, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that I don't ultimately need to see it in the graph form. Like if running those on those spreadsheets, if you have the ability to just, tab across the bottom, this is the Excel spreadsheet that shows 1%, 2%, 3%, or, some way that then it's there. We can then as a committee come back together and say, do we need to actually try to articulate this in a graphical sort of manner? But I just want to be able to see the 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, that's no problem. I was just thinking of a presentation. If I put all of that in, we're gonna have a huge presentation. So yeah, I mean, we can easily. I mean, these numbers aren't that hard to redo, and we can come up with exactly what you're talking about, and give you, maybe in a spreadsheet form, and then if we want to come back and redo the presentation, then maybe we can talk about what we really want in the presentation, so we just don't kill somebody with 100 pages of graphs that they're going to look through. So I think at that point, yeah, I don't think that's an issue for us to do that, and to do that at 1, 2, and 3. Well, 3% we've obviously already got, but we can put that in the spreadsheet as well, and show you where that goes. And I'm in the office tomorrow. I don't know if it'll all be done tomorrow, but I am out on Friday, so it may be the first part of next week. Does that work for y'all? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
that'd be fine.
Yeah.
Hey, Jan, I was just looking at some of the retirees from the last couple years. We had somebody at 55, we've had 58, 57, and then, we've had somebody at 71. So they're kind of all over the board.
Yeah, it's I mean, one of the things we talk about when we kind of look for assumptions and actuarial stuff is, do we have a group large enough to be credible? And usually you need a group much larger than this to kind of, because you don't when you've got a group of 10,000 and you're looking at them and they've all retired and you've got all their retirement age, it's like, oh, there's a pattern here. But when there's a smaller group, you could have a run where everybody goes out at 57 or or all that. So it's really hard to tell in a smaller group what's reasonable.
I think to address that concern about which one do we show as the model in the display, I think it really says which one is the most realistic. I expect that it'll be a wash, that they'll get the same results, because if you add 3% each one, I expect that the difference that Blake is talking about will be, very tiny.
Yeah, I think it will be. But yeah, I mean, we could take a look at that. Like I said, it's not that much additional work for us to do it. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be pretty close to the same as a percentage of payroll. I think one of the things and I didn't think of this till this afternoon when I was looking at it, some of these numbers may have been better as a percentage of payroll. And I think I will put that in the spreadsheet as well, because you look at these numbers, and especially if you're looking at somebody that's, 35 or 40, and we're projecting it out to 65, and we're projecting it out at any percent, their salary is going to be a lot more, I mean, as long as it's even 1, 2, or 3%. So I think maybe what we need to look at is where are the percentages as well. We can put the other stuff in there too, but that kind of tells you, okay, when you retire, I'm going to retire and I'm going to be able to replace 40% of my salary with my annuity. And I think that kind of tells people a little bit better than your salary is going to be $135,000 in 30 years. So maybe we look at something like that too. And I really didn't think about that till the day when I was kind of looking at the presentation to get ready to present it. So there's no real time for me to do it. But I could get all of that in a spreadsheet and pass that along, and we could see where, and then we can just figure out what the next steps are as to communicating to others what we want to communicate. All right.
Yeah. I think out of all of this, the thing, I mean, I appreciate this work, Larry. It's very helpful because I think you did a very comprehensive job of trying to represent and model what it'd be like to switch to IPERS, which is something that we needed desperately. But it really raises the critical question is how much is that early retirement option worth to the people that are in the DMTRS plan? Because they will have to, in order to get any benefit out of switching to IPERS, they will have to stay in longer, period. I mean, you're going to have to get to 65 to really see an effect. So, it's time, right?
Right.
That's the difference, is how much time do you have? And how much
And
you
also
want to do.
people's, somebody that's 40 right now may think, hey, I'm going to work to 65. And then, maybe they get an inheritance, maybe get something and they want to go out at 55, or they, so you, even having an idea of what you want to do is not the be all end all, especially the further out from that retirement date you get. So it's really, it would be asking some of these people to make a decision 15, 20 years out into the future. Really, do you really want to work that long, not knowing your circumstances, not knowing what's going to be there in 15, 20 years.
Well, and I think with that will come the communication challenge of making sure that people who, now this group is in IPERS and this group is in IPERS plus DMTRS. So this group will have these scenarios when they think about how retirement works, and this group will have this scenario. And so because they're going to be different, being able to communicate that clearly to people will also be a communication challenge that we're going to have to be ready for if we decide to do that, or if I should say the school board decides that this is something that would be a good thing. But I think for us as a board, what we really need to find out from our people is how much is that early retirement option worth?
Yeah,
I mean,
Jessica-
people that like me or close to my age, I'm 55 already, so I could go right now, right? But for people who are close to 55, they may have a clearer understanding. And when they look at these numbers, they may say, oh gosh, not worth it to me. And one of the things that we discussed was that if we're going to roll people to IPERS, we'd have to roll a set group, like all people who fit this parameter would have to go. And it'd have to be less than 20% of the actives that we have now. So we're talking about this would not be something that the people who are age, 49 to 54, they're not going to be really impacted by this one way or the other, right? So like they're going to be retiring with DMTRS. That's just the way that one is. But for our younger people, we'd still have to consider that communication error. Although that's a smaller problem now, it'll be a bigger problem in 15 to 20 years, right?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, especially if, it really could be, especially as you have the break and someone, this group went here and this group went there, and, they're a year apart and one person can do something the other person can't do. So anyway, yeah, there's a lot to think about.
One thing that we talked about, and I had run this report by Matt earlier today, and we talked about some things, and he said, if it's a consideration at all and a recommendation of this committee to move a certain group, that his feeling was that we need to then send something to every single person that it impacts and make sure they completely agree with what they're signing on to, and that they sign off on it. If one person doesn't sign off, the group doesn't go. Because I think they need to understand that by doing this, I have to work X amount more years. This is what I'm agreeing to, because what we don't want to do is then move somebody and they say, oh, well, I was planning on retiring at 58 and now I can't because you moved me. Now what are you going to do for me? Because we can't do anything more. So it's just going to be a very clear understanding of what's happening and an agreement on their part if this is recommended at all. So I just wanted to bring that up. Barb?
So just to add to Jessica's earlier summary, so virtually we're saying that a person to benefit, they would have to have 20 years in IPERS. Is that correct? They would have to be having like 40 or younger, be willing to work in 20 more years.
Well, I think most people, just because the early retirement factor is not as, as big at age 62, I think almost everybody was benefiting at 62, but I'd have to check that, and I can definitely do that. I don't know that I can do that while we're on the phone here. But I think obviously if you were 60, so if you were 62 and didn't have 20 years, the bars are probably pretty close. If you're 62 with 20 years, it's obvious which one wins out. So I think we had it, and again, this is assuming you get 5.78% interest and everything else in the assumptions that, and again, this could change a little bit but I don't expect much with the, with the new assumptions from the salary scale, that, there could be some people at 62 that don't, but I believe they all were kind of winning, but just by different magnitudes.
Yeah.
Some that it was really didn't matter at all, and some that it was like, okay, I hit 20 years. This really works for me. So I think if you're looking at 62, I think it's really close unless you have the 20 years.
Kathy,
and I'd have to confirm that though, to be honest.
Okay. So Kathy, how many actives are, say, just 42 at 42 or younger, just out of curiosity?
Well,
Or
44
or
and younger, 40 under 45, there are 17.
Okay.
Yep, Barb, if you want to look at that more on the graphs.
It shows the age groups.
Yeah, it will
Okay,
show, it'll
great.
say like, so if you want to look at that more in depth or.
Yeah.
I have a
Okay,
question
thanks.
that is probably for Shashank and for Kathy as the planned administrative team is, do we feel comfortable with these assumptions from a going forward perspective? Because we're making, a 5.78% assumption, which leads to X, Y, and Z. And I know that we don't have any crystal ball guarantees, but are we confident that our investment strategy and planning allows us to have some confidence to share with members that this is what we anticipate the best going forward?
So Blake, as you said, there is no crystal ball. And the best we can do in the absence of crystal ball is look at a 5-year average. If we had seen 1 or 2 years average, it would be different. So we said 5 years should iron out, hopefully, any kinks which could be there. I mean, and again, history is no guarantee of the future, as you well know.
So let me ask a different question. Is it correct?
Hopefully for Larry, or is it for me too, Jessica?
No, I think it's for Larry or the group. Shashank, you're welcome to jump in here. You might have an idea about this one. So if people were to quit DMPS and go work for another district so they could switch to IPERS, this scenario would hold up the exact same way.
Yeah.
Is that correct thinking?
Yeah, if somebody quit and switched over to IPERS, it would, we'd be in the same situation. So if somebody, 45 quit and went over to IPERS, these graphs would look exactly the same. And again, we assume all plans stay the same too. If all of a sudden IPERS decided they were going to give a COLA, then the graph changed, but I mean, under current plan scenarios, yes, everything would be the exact same.
Yeah, that's what I was driving. I just want to make sure that my thinking on that was clear.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add one thing on Blake's question about the interest rates. Blake, I looked at the 5-year and the 10-year average. The 5-year was 5.78 and the 10-year was 5.44. So there isn't that much variance in those. That was the best I could do as far as a number. You know, I don't want to just pick a number out of the air and say, let's go with 4, because that's not a historical basis. So I can't predict what the market will do going forward. So that's kind of where we came up with what we did.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And for me, it was just in having some confidence that like, hey, you know what, we're using a fair 5-year average here. I think what that helps the advisory board going forward is as we look at, and, you know, and we receive reports from our BTC team, is we kind of know, okay, this 5.78, which of course always has squishiness from year to year, but it helps us to have an aiming point, something that those of you who have had to listen to me pontificate for 3 years, I've struggled with what has seemed like us not having a target and a goal in terms of what we're trying to achieve within the actual investment side of things. And I think knowing, you know, what 5.78 does and looks like for members, I think then we need to go back to that conversation about if we were to make adjustments to our investment policy and mixture, how does it impact on the positive side and also that risk analysis? I think we need to go back to that and to have that conversation.
Are there any other questions for Larry at this time? Jan?
If someone could just clarify how you got the 12% for excess earnings, I guess I don't understand that.
So that was a 5-year average also for Group E in the plan. So they had 2 years at 14%, one at 13, one at 11, one at 9, came to a 12.2% average over the 5 years.
But aren't those, didn't you say that's the group that's 4.5%?
Right, but that if you were to retire today, that would be the group you would be in.
And so that group, that retirement group actually got 12%. They didn't get 4.5, they got 12.
Their initial benefit is calculated on 4.5%. So your monthly guaranteed benefit is calculated using the 4.5% factor. And then the excess earning comes on top of that. So if you, it's, this year it's 9%, or for 21-22, it's 9%. So they get 9% of their guaranteed monthly benefit in excess earnings. So think of it kind of as they're getting 9% dividend every month.
Yeah, another good way, Jan, is to think of it as because the plan earned, you know, almost 5.6% interest. That's more than 4.5%. So the application to their dollars is that they got 9%, but it's not 9% interest. It's just 9% more in that payment that they already had. That's why I'd asked my question before. I wondered if it was the average for just that group E or if it was all the groups. So I appreciated that clarity.
Thanks.
Well, Larry, I thank you very much. I will let you sign off. You've spent plenty of time with me today, and I appreciate that.
No problem.
So, thank you, and we can touch base once you get the other calculations done on the 1% and 2%. If you want to just shoot me an email, and you and I can touch base, and then I'll get that out to the committee.
Okay. I will keep you informed as to how we're moving. Like I said, I'm off Friday, so it'll probably be, you know, early part of next week that we're able to get that to you. All right.
Thank you, Larry.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Okay, so from there, is there anything further that this group needs to do today, or do we need to just wait until we hear back from Larry?
I'm thinking we wait, Kathy, and then I think we already have a meeting scheduled December 14th. So hopefully that gives us a pretty good turnaround. That gives, you know, in case if Larry needs more than a few days, that gives us time to look at it, to think about it. And then my assumption is that we'll have kind of a conversation about this on December 14th. That's sort of the, what's the impact? You know, what does all this mean for us? What do we do with this?
Okay. Is everybody in agreement with that? And because I know all of you are really nervous and haven't slept at all at night, I'm still counting the ballots for the election. The electronic ones just closed yesterday and I haven't gotten that report back in. But I'm pretty sure, fingers crossed, all of you, that if you put your name in the hat, you are elected. So I will clarify that for you at our next meeting and then we can talk about the terms. But in case you weren't sleeping, I wanted to let you know that.
I just have a question, Kathy. Is there a way to challenge the results?
I don't know how to
Terry,
feel
I
about
don't know,
that.
you know, we could drag it on like all the other elections have been, I guess.
Yeah, I think we need to have another set of eyes looking at those ballots.
I like that idea, Terry.
Hey, Kathy, not to end on a downer by any means, but I guess the one challenge I would ask the advisory committee to consider before the next meeting is with the regards to the younger group and the possible transition to IPERS, know that I also look at it from an equity lens of if they were in that IPERS group, they could transfer somewhere other than Des Moines. And by no means do I want anybody leaving Des Moines, but every other person in IPERS has that fluidity to go to a different IPERS covered job in the state, where if you're in DMTRS, you don't have that. And I know you really can't put a price on that. And by no means do I want anybody leaving, but I think that's the only thing I didn't hear. Jessica talked a little bit about it, you know, if they left and went somewhere else, but I just would challenge people to consider that from that equity lens as well, just having that fluidity. But we want everybody to come here, so we'll end on that.
Anybody else have anything before we close today?
Thank you to you, Kathy and Shashank, because I know that you've been pushing and helping numbers with Larry, so appreciate that.
No problem. And I will
This
let you
report
guys
was
know
very
as soon
helpful.
as I get the information back from Larry. I'll try to send it out again as early as I can, so you've got time to look at it before we meet, because I think that that's helpful for all of us. Blake, and I appreciate you sending your questions ahead of time, because I think that gave Larry a little bit of time to prepare and be ready to respond. All right, well.
This was
I
very
will-
helpful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the report.
It looks like there's a
Oh, one
question.
question.
Rich?
Yes, a real quick question. Kathy, have you heard anything from principal yet about the state sales tax?
I did hear from them. I don't like their answer, so I'm pushing back on them. What Rich is referring to is, as of January, there should not be income tax withheld from pension benefits. And so our assumption was that principal would just stop withholding as of January 1. And we have heard from them that that is not their intent. Their intent is if someone wants to have it stop, they need to notify us, or that they can, their answer was, or it can all be figured out when they claim their taxes. And I said, that's not an acceptable solution. That's a whole year of withholding. And then you have to wait essentially four more months to get it back. That was not an acceptable. I know that Wells Fargo, who we used to be with, sent something out to their own employees, their own pensioners, saying that they were not going to withhold unless people notified them that they did want it withheld. So I've trying to get principal to do that. I'm
Kathy, that
uh-huh.
was for me. I'll admit, yeah, that came from me. I'll admit to that. And that was
Yep.
not Wells Fargo. That was the Brotherhood of Pipe Fitters and Plumbers and Pipe Fitters.
Okay.
It was not Wells Fargo, but they
Okay,
did
well,
say that, yeah.
I keep moving my conversations up the ranks at principal, so I'm hoping to have an answer here real soon, because we've got one more benefit to be paid before that comes into play. And I don't want people to have it taken out and then figure it out on their taxes. So
And just
more
to
to come.
clarify, that is just to clarify, it is state taxes, not federal. Federal would still be taken out as usual.
Correct. So I'm working on it, Rich, and I hope to have answers here soon. It's on my weekly follow-up letters to principals. So hopefully I'll hear something soon. All right. We will convene again, I believe it's the 14th. Was that right? Okay. In the meantime, if you have anything, just shoot me an email. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Kathy.
Good night.
Night.